Melina was targeted for being very attractive. Mozart was targeted for being confident and talented. Miss Mellon was targeted for knowing something about someone that could get that person in trouble. Slim was targeted for refusing to accept or tolerate abusive behavior. And in this movie, someone is being targeted for being useful to a network agenda. The movie isn't about gang stalking, but some elements are very similar. There is a variation of a little stalking by proxy by neighbors using someone close to the target. It's a good illustration of the puppet master-handler relationship. It also serves as an example of how a network could find a target that they could use, but who may not be receptive to them if approached directly, so they bribe someone close to them to betray them and manipulate events in the target's life to force a target to do what they want. The movie starts with a young couple looking for an apartment. They are viewing the apartment of an elderly woman who recently passed away in a hospital. Guy, the husband, is a struggling actor. Rosemary, the wife, loves the living room of the apartment. As they are touring the place, they found that the old lady had somehow, oddly, moved a big dresser in front of a closet. The next scene shows them having dinner with Hutch, their old landlord, who tells them that the building they want to move into has a bad history of cannibalism, witchcraft, devil conjuring, and a dead infant wrapped in a newspaper. Rosemary and Guy are still interested in renting the apartment. The beginning shows what appears to be a healthy relationship between two people with supportive and caring friends. Most real TIs are generally sane people who have normal relationships and interactions with others. Not saying that TIs are perfect people with no faults, but many are not the insane, violent, suicidal, antisocial, or other bad things that the SBP network tries to portray them as or turn them into. The next scene shows Rosemary talking to another tenant in the basement. Terry, the tenant, says that she has been living with Rosemary's next-door neighbors since June. She was a drug addict and was starving in the streets when the neighbors picked her off the streets and let her live with them. She said that they were very nice to her and treated her like a granddaughter. At night, Rosemary and her husband hear weird chanting coming from the Castevet's apartment, and the next scene shows that Terry killed herself by jumping out the window. The next day, Minnie, Mrs. Castevet, stops by to chat and look at how Rosemary decorated the apartment. She invites Rosemary and her husband over for dinner. When Rosemary tells Guy about the invite, he doesn't want to go and warns that if they go, it will be just once because he doesn't want the nuisance of an old, lonely, childless couple clinging to them. At dinner, Roman gets Guy's attention and interest and invites him back the next night. Guy agrees to go without Rosemary. Minnie, Mrs. Castevet, invites herself and another tenant over to Rosemary's apartment. Minnie gives Rosemary the same necklace that she had given Terry. Rosemary recognizes the necklace and is reluctant to take it, but Minnie insists and tells her to put it on right away. Rosemary shows the necklace to Guy and mentions the horrible odor. She puts it away while mimicking Mimi, but Guy says that if she took the necklace, she should wear it. Rosemary is surprised that Guy is sticking up for Minnie, but brushes it off. Rosemary's neighbors come off as the stereotypical annoying and nosy neighbors, but they are about to do a lot more than just gossip and pry into details about Rosemary's life. They are about to infest her life and ruin it. Similar to pests slowly and covertly breaking down the foundations of a structure, they will try to break down the foundations of her relationship with everyone, including her own self, until they are the only creatures left, in an attempt to hijack Rosemary's attention and torment her into the acceptance of their infestation. TIs face the same sort of infestation by members of the SBP network. Minnie is pushy and just forces herself into Rosemary's life. Rosemary is polite out of social norms, which is another example of psychopaths exploiting social norms and pushing social boundaries to get what they want. The Cassavets realize that as the new tenants and a younger couple, the Woodhouses would feel social pressure to be polite and accept their offers or risk being seen as rude, unfriendly neighbors if the Cassavets wanted an excuse for their intrusive behavior. The SBP network also plays on these social norms by moving their members to where the TI lives or recruiting the neighbors who already live there. They use the friendly, helpful neighbors excuse to force and maintain interactions with the TI. The SBP members rarely act alone or without fellow members nearby, similar to Minnie inviting herself and her friend over to Rosemary's apartment. The SBP members surround the TI's place of residence to have someone to back up the lies, slander, and support the incidents that they set up. Rosemary notices that Guy, who was initially reluctant to hang out with the Cassavets, is suddenly warming up to them. Similarly, TIs may notice people who are close to them or were once loyal, caring, and supportive slowly changing and becoming more emotionally and psychologically distant in ways that could be easily dismissed at first, but not so later on. Guy got a part in a play because the actor who initially got the part suddenly went blind. Guy isn't pleased by how he got the part, but accepts it. He suddenly starts getting a lot of work and isn't giving Rosemary a lot of attention. The next scene shows Rosemary somewhat complaining to Hutch, the former landlord. Guy realizes that he has been a selfish jerk, buys a bunch of roses, and tells Rosemary that they should have a baby. They have a romantic dinner, but are interrupted when Minnie stops by with a chocolate mousse dessert that she made and wants them to try. Rosemary doesn't like it after discovering that it has a chalky aftertaste. Guy gets upset and pressures her to eat all of it. She only eats a little, then dumps the rest when he gets up to change the record. Rosemary starts to feel dizzy after dinner. Guy tells her she needs a good night's sleep and then carries her to the bed. He undresses her, saying it's to make her more comfortable. She dreams she is tied down to a bed and surrounded by naked people, including her neighbors and Guy. Someone or something raped her. During the incident, she realizes it was no dream, but is held down and her face is covered. When she woke up, she has scratches on her body. Guy said that he had slept with her while she was passed out. Her relationship with her husband is becoming more strained. Rosemary finds out that she is pregnant, and the first people that Guy wants to tell is their neighbors. He does, and he invites them over. They tell Rosemary which obstetrician to see, and that very night, Minnie makes the appointment for her to see him the next day. Rosemary already had an obstetrician, but Guy sides with the Castevets and pressures her to go see their obstetrician. Rosemary starts wearing the necklace that Minnie gave her. The obstetrician, Dr. Sepperstein, tells her not to read any pregnancy books, listen to friends or family's advice, or take vitamins. He told her that he would have Minnie prepare a drink for her that contains an herb that is supposedly better than any vitamin on the market. Guy is acting strange, and a once healthy relationship is now strained. Rosemary noticed and wants to talk about it, but Guy avoids the issue. He is also becoming closer to the Castevets, which is also strange because he initially didn't want anything to do with them. Rosemary must have been wondering why in the world would he want the Castevets to be the first ones to know about the pregnancy. Similarly, TIs may notice that those close to them start acting strange or somewhat hostile towards them. They may also see those close to them hanging out more with people who rub them the wrong way or seem like the wrong crowd. Those close to them may become more popular or seem to go out more often, but it leaves a feeling that something is wrong. Those close to the TI may pressure or force the TI to tolerate or accept the new undesirable person or crowd that has started to infest their relationships. The Castevets found Guy to be more receptive to their attempts to forcefully get into Rosemary's life and used him to indirectly increase their reach and influence over Rosemary. In other words, they used Guy to get to Rosemary. Rosemary gets a haircut, and Guy insults her by asking her if she actually paid for it. She mentions having a sharp pain in her abdominal area, and he asks if she told the obstetrician, Dr. Sepperstein, and she says she's waiting for her next regular appointment. Dr. Sepperstein tells her everything's okay and to take aspirins for the pain. When she uses a term that could only be known through reading a pregnancy book, he gets upset, reprimands her, and slams the door while repeating the term in a sarcastic tone. Hutch stops by to visit Rosemary. Roman rings the bell shortly afterwards and asks if Rosemary needs anything. He covertly pressures Rosemary to introduce him to Hutch. He checks Hutch out, then leaves. Guy unexpectedly comes home and surprises Rosemary and Hutch. When Hutch is leaving, he notices one of his gloves has suddenly gone missing. Rosemary tells Guy that Hutch mentioned how bad she looked, and Guy insults Hutch, although they had been on friendly terms before. Guy goes out for a newspaper right after Hutch leaves. Hutch calls Rosemary and asks her to meet him the next day so he could tell her something important. Guy wants to know when and where she's meeting Hutch. He goes out for ice cream right after she tells him. The next day, Hutch doesn't show up for the meeting, and when Rosemary calls, she finds out that he was taken to the hospital in a coma. Rosemary is shocked and just wanders around the city. Minnie suddenly shows up out of nowhere and calls it a coincidence. Rosemary is feeling too ill to walk around, and Minnie takes her home. Rosemary looks awful and has been isolated from her former friends. She decides to throw a party where only her younger friends are invited. She and Guy had only been hanging out with the older neighbors and the older obstetrician. At the party, her friends mention how bad she looks. Rosemary is happier, but Guy looks uneasy. Rosemary breaks down and her friends comfort her. They tell her to see another obstetrician because she's been in pain for so long and Dr. Sepperstein has done nothing about it. After the party, Rosemary tells Guy she wants to see a different doctor and he gets mad. He calls her friends bitches and they get into an argument. Guy says it's not fair to her current doctor for her to see someone else. Rosemary says, "What about her?" and starts yelling at him. The pain suddenly stopped and the baby started moving. Guy is only interested in what was in the new drink she made herself instead of drinking the one that Minnie gave her. Rosemary wants him to feel the baby move, and he moves his hand away quickly in fear after feeling it. She tells him not to be afraid, but he avoids the issue by saying that he has to clean up. Rosemary was being isolated from her former friends. Suddenly, Guy only wanted to hang out with the elderly neighbors. She was also assaulted but thought it was a nightmare. She feels and looks terrible, but Guy keeps telling her she looks great and blames her haircut for the bad reviews. TIs also faced harsh criticism, excessive lying, isolation from enjoyable or good company, being forced or pressured to be around bad company, etc., from those who betrayed them. Somehow they will suspect that something is wrong, that they look and feel or feel terrible, or that they need a change for the better. However, those who betray them will try to make them feel as if they are exaggerating or paranoid or something else. They'll say, or it will seem as if the betrayers are trying to spare the TI's feelings, but they are really being deceptive. Rosemary's former friends are coming around and she starts to realize that something is truly wrong. When she tries to make changes to improve things, she faced a backlash from the one person who should have supported her, Guy. The SBP network uses various methods to break down the TI's support system. Guy totally abandoned Rosemary. TIs will find themselves abandoned by some of their nearest and dearest, although sometimes TIs stay away from some of their nearest and dearest to avoid putting them in harm's way. However, in most cases, the SBP members lie, slander, threaten, and instigate fights to break down the TI's relationships. Unfortunately, in the early stages of the campaign against the TI, when the TI doesn't know they are targeted, some SBP members will try to befriend, date, marry, and even go as far as having a child with the target to get a better hold on the target and deliberately cause problems between the TI and those close to the TI. Of course, the fake relationships break apart, leaving the TI confused, heartbroken, isolated, and or estranged from those that were once close and on good terms with the TI. Under normal circumstances, not all relationships or friendships work out or last long. But when a TI finds out that she or he was targeted, she or he can begin to see which broken relationships were real and which were fake. The Cassavetes acted like they had some kind of ownership over Rosemary. Those who don't know better would say that they were protective, but in actuality, they were possessive. Ask Rosemary, and she probably would have told you that the Cassavetes had little or no influence over her. Although she did notice their invasive behavior, but because they had Guy, they were able to indirectly wield more control over her. Without Guy, the Cassavetes probably would have had a hard time getting Rosemary to go to or keep going to Dr. Sipperstein. Here is a good illustration of a theory on how the SBP network is organized. The Cassavetes would be the puppet masters running things from behind the scenes and not getting too involved. Guy would be the handler taking orders from the Cassavetes and their network and making sure that Rosemary complies. He handles the target, Rosemary. Guy also introduces Dr. Sipperstein, who served both as a handler and a puppet master, so he was more directly involved than the Cassavetes. Minnie did some street team duties when she tried to force a friendship with Rosemary. However, Rosemary rejected a close friendship with Minnie or Roman, so they had to use Guy. The other neighbors could have served as the street team, stalking and harassing Rosemary if needed, as well as recruiting and manipulating the audience or bystanders. The closest illustration of that would be the doctor that Rosemary went to for help. After Rosemary suddenly left Dr. Sipperstein's office when she suspected that he was in on the whole thing, she may have been tailed to the other doctor's office. Who knows what Dr. Sipperstein said to the second doctor, but whatever it was, it convinced the doctor that Rosemary was crazy or was going crazy. The second doctor was a bystander or member of the audience, but he was manipulated to believe that Rosemary was crazy and handed her over to the network when she went to him for assistance. Many TIs have had a similar experience as this when they sought assistance. It's how the SBP network gets away with the assaults, thefts, even murder, and other crimes against the innocent targets. Also note how they all were nice, polite, and helpful to Rosemary while they were backstabbing her. They even prevented her from getting or accepting help from those outside their network. It's the Jekyll and Hyde method, sort of similar to the good guy Mitch and bad guy Mitch method. Guy used it on Rosemary. Whatever gets the psychopaths what they want, whether it's being nice, mean, or anything in between. Normal people have been nice, mean, or anything in between to get what they want, but it was probably done within reason. Normal people probably didn't want to badly hurt someone or destroy an innocent person's life just to get what they wanted. Again, decent and normal people, let this be a caveat to be careful who you date, befriend, or let into your life. You don't have to tolerate or befriend all of your friends, lovers, or even relatives, friends, or acquaintances. Parents, you don't have to befriend your kids' regular friends or best friends' parents. know who they are, and check them out, but you don't have to be their friend or best friend. Some SBP members will try to get to or use the TI's kids to influence the parents who are TIs. That's not a radical statement, nor is that a new tactic. Advertisers have been using kids to influence parents' decisions and choices for a long time, but in a normal way that doesn't threaten the parent's life or safety, unlike the SBP network. The SBP members behave as if they own the TI and could do whatever they want to the TI, whether or not the TI permits it. Similar to the same possessiveness that the Psychopaths had for Rosemary. Rosemary's pregnancy starts going normal and she looks better. She is still drinking Minnie's drinks. Hutch dies but leaves her a book. She finds out that Roman is the son of the guy who claimed to have conjured the devil in the building that they lived in. Roman had changed his name. Rosemary tells Guy, who ridicules the idea and doesn't want her reading the book anymore. He takes the book away from her, but Rosemary is convinced that Roman is no good. She doesn't want them around the baby and tells Dr. Sipperstein, who is a good friend of the Castavets. Dr. Sipperstein agrees with her and says he'll tell the Castavets to take a vacation that they put on hold because they wanted to be around for the birth of Rosemary's baby. Rosemary finds out that Dr. Sipperstein was also one of the witches when the doctor's nurse mentioned that he smelled of the same devil's fungus that was in the necklace that Minnie gave her and that the book mentioned witches used in their rituals. She found out that Guy had a personal item from the actor who went blind, and Guy was his replacement. In the witchcraft book she was reading, it mentioned that witches needed the victim's personal item to use in rituals to cause blindness, paralysis, and other harm, and even death. She calls the first obstetrician that she visited and asks him to meet with her and deliver her baby. She tells the new doctor everything she knows about the witchcraft and thinks they want her baby for their rituals. The new doctor doesn't believe in witches, but believes her story because there are crazy people out there. He asks the name of her old doctor, and he is surprised to hear who it is. Rosemary mentions that just by looking at him, you would never guess that someone like Dr. Sipperstein, an accomplished and well-known doctor, would be involved in the craziness that is surrounding her. The new doctor betrays her and calls her husband and Dr. Sipperstein. They come in and tell Rosemary if she makes a scene or continues to talk about witchcraft, they will take her to a mental hospital. Rosemary is shocked. She thought she was safe and just leaves with her husband and Dr. Sipperstein in a stunned state. Rosemary tries to get away from them, but they corner her. Dr. Sipperstein gives her a sedative, but she goes into labor early. When she wakes up, one of the neighbors is guarding her. She wants to know where her baby is, and Dr. Sipperstein told her the baby died due to complications. The baby didn't die and is the spawn of Satan. Minnie told Rosemary that out of all the females in the world, Satan supposedly chose her and arranged things so that she would have his son. Guy confessed that he sold Rosemary and her firstborn for fame and fortune, and said they had promised not to hurt her. He thinks that she has not been hurt. Minnie tried to make Rosemary feel special, but she and Roman had picked up a drug addict off the streets and seemed to have suggested the idea of being the mother of Satan's child. Terry, the female Rosemary met in the laundry room, appeared to be their first choice, but she committed suicide rather than take their offer. That night, that might have been what Rosemary overheard Minnie complaining about when she heard Minnie say to her husband that she told her husband not to tell her in advance because she wasn't open-minded enough, and how they had to start all over the night that Terry died. It seemed as if Satan wasn't that picky and was just waiting for the first person who would take him up on that offer. Not many would, so that's probably why Guy didn't tell Rosemary and they had to bribe him with fortune and fame. Guy set up his own wife. He sold his influence over her and cashed in on her trust so that he could live in luxury. He helped them rape her and even watched. He failed in his duties as a husband and a human being. Of course, he reasoned that what they were getting in return for Rosemary's flesh and firstborn were worth it. Guy wasn't touched. He just watched and deceived Rosemary. The baby wasn't his, so he didn't care. He planned on having more kids with Rosemary and living happily ever after. But that would have meant a lie hanging over the marriage that could tear it apart. Guy was a psychopath, not a prudent husband. He was only interested in himself. If he thought that Rosemary would go for it, then he would have been upfront about the Cassavets' offer and at least tried to convince her to accept the offer. He didn't do that because he knew she wouldn't go for it. Instead, he pimped his wife without her knowledge. Among his deceptive acts were when Rosemary didn't want to finish the chocolate mousse dessert that Minnie drugged. He refused to eat it but forced her to finish it. He probably helped with getting Hutch's glove and was therefore responsible for Hutch's death. Hutch was a good friend that he turned on just to get what he wanted. A psychopath is loyal only to him or herself. When Rosemary figured out what was happening, she had no one to turn to because what was happening sounded so crazy, but it was really happening to her. Of course, this is just a movie, but there have been many real-life stories where something as crazy or horrific as what happened to Rosemary actually occurred. Although it may not have been as extreme as having the spawn of Satan. Human trafficking victims had a hard time getting people to pay attention or believe them at first. The Tuskegee experiments were another unbelievably true violation. The Hollywood blacklist was one where victims' claims were dismissed, although it was an open secret and many people knew it was happening. There are many more unbelievably true atrocities, but the point is that once people stopped being afraid and spoke out and against these disgusting acts, something was done and progress was made. Maybe not all of it has gone away, but it was a lot harder for more innocent people to be victimized in those ways, and the world became safer.